Yo, what is up, everybody? We are live with episode 193 of Voices of Revival. We are joined tonight by Matt Montgomery. Matt, I believe you've been on the podcast once before. Is that correct?
Yeah, I was with Colin and Ian jumped on late.
Yeah. Colin and Ian. We at it tonight, though, one on one, just me and Matt. We are in the mix of a 21-day run where we are doing 21 days of just straight podcasts. That's almost more podcasts. That's almost the same amount of podcasts that we did in the entire first year of operations. And we're just hitting all of that in 1 month. It's a very busy month. As we hit these 21 straight days of podcasts, we are really just leaning into testimonies of Jesus. We talk a lot about like things about God, and I think at least in the case of like Voices of Revival, we haven't spent a lot of time just like posing the question of, hey, what's your story? Right? Like walk me through your story and like your testimony. What was your story before Christ, right? And like tell me about the moment you found Christ and tell me what he has done since you've been walking with him. We are joined though tonight by Matt Montgomery. And Matt, I'm just gonna turn it over to you right now, man. What's your story? Tell me about where Jesus has brought you from and what he has done in your life, my guy.
Well, I would like to say it started when I was 7. Obviously, you know, um, I'm the only full believer in the house. Praying my family fully gets saved, but um, it started at a young age. My parents would just send me and my brothers, my siblings, to church. Obviously, I thought everybody would think God is real. Even at a young age, I thought that was just the standard, even if I didn't know Him. You know, I went to all these different churches, and um, it wasn't until later in my life I took God more serious. Growing up, I went through a lot of mental health issues. Had suicide ideations at a very young age. Even at 11 years old, I remember it was one day where I ran away from the house because this was like the standard where we lived. I used to live over in Franklin by CBS, and the cops would get called every single day, and they'd be like, "Oh, Matthew's doing this," and at this point, this one day, I just got fed up with everything, and I said, "You know what? I'm done. What's the point of even living?" And that's scary at a young age when you're especially that young and you don't even know what that fully is. And that was my way to escape. So I would run away as an escape. And if you're from Franklin, you know what a bike trail is. And when I was younger, I couldn't swim, so that was my way to take me out. And as I'm getting ready to jump in and just drown myself, I hear this voice. And mind you, I'm young, and a lot of people think I'm crazy because I'm on all this medicine. And for the first time, this voice doesn't say "go kill yourself." Go kill yourself. It says, "Wait, stop, don't do that." And I'm thinking to myself, it's probably just a voice, I'm hallucinating. And it says it again. And after that, I go down a path. I don't go to church for a few years. I get introduced to drugs weed at a young age, around high school, not high school, junior high. And I'm just like, I'm getting involved in these bad things. I'm running around doing this thing. I'm stealing. I'm in and out of JDC for hitting my parents and doing all these things. And I was still doing suicide. And it wasn't until high school where I actually had a little change. Obviously, you're going into a new school, you're going to make new friends, you're getting into high school sports. And I was like, maybe this is a new start with me. I find a new church. And by the grace of God, my best friend, obviously she's in the army right now, but we've been best friends since first grade. She introduced me to this church, and it was my first time in like 8 years. And at this point, I was dealing with so much sin and all this stuff. Like, I was the kid. that didn't speak up about anything. I didn't go to my parents about anything when anything went wrong. I would always go to my friends. And same thing with sin. And at this point, I kind of took a God a little more serious, but not as serious because I was still dealing with stuff. And ended up leaving this church due to a lot of church hurt, and which ended up pushing me away. And I ended up straying even farther down the line, because again, at a young age, it was forced. So like I didn't want to go to church if I was forced. After high school, I had stopped smoking weed and doing all these things, and I had got this job. I worked at Uggs for 2 years, and I started in 2023. And everything started going better. And then that's when just the suicide just hit my breaking point. It just got even worse. I mean, there's times where, and I haven't even told this part of the story, where I told Colin this. We were talking, and I was in the car, not in the car. Every time I would have an argument with my parents. I would go in my room and I would say, God, if you don't, I hated God at this point so bad. I basically said, God, you have to kill me. I would tell God every single day, kill me, kill me, kill me. And like when you hear that, you're like, is that really real? I'm like, yeah, it's like that's how I felt. Like, because again, I thought God's against me, like you're not helping me. So I'm like, every day I would get in a fight, I would run in my room, I would hit myself, say, God, kill me, kill me, kill me, kill me. And I begged God for a good few months to like just basically end my life. And it wasn't until December where I was like, all right, God, if you're not going to take me out, I'm going to take myself out and you're not going to stop me. And at this point, like, God was not stopping me. I had stopped because I had went to a different church, and, quite frankly, I just left there. And I went to a youth group. I walk into this building. This was after high school. My friend had introduced me, and I was like, at this point with church, I didn't really care about it, but this church felt different. I walked into the youth center for the first time, and we're gonna get back where how I run into my youth pastor, and I ended up not killing myself. But I ended up going to this. It's called Oasis. Their motto is one for all for one. And basically they take the ones that nobody likes, the trouble ones and all this stuff. And I walked in for the first time, and me going to all these youth groups over the years, the youth pastor never greeted me. Nobody was friendly or anything. You just like kind of had to do yourself. But the first time I walk in the building, nobody else greets me but the youth pastor. And at that point I'm like, maybe this is different. Maybe I got God all wrong and this and that. And I'm going back and forth. I don't go to Oasis, I go back. And fast forward to 2023, December, after not going to church for like 6 months, it's 5 days before Christmas. I had just gotten to argue with my dad, and I basically said this was my plan. I basically said, I have a plan. I'm gonna go do this. I'm gonna take, because I didn't have my license set up at that time. So my plan was to take an Uber to the Cincinnati Bridge where it connects Kentucky, and to jump off. And I basically said, this is my plan. I had everything in motion, and I had just got done arguing with my dad, really bad fight. And I basically was like, if you don't take me out, I'm taking myself out. So my mom ended up doing Christmas shopping that with my little brother. So she was like, if you want to go, you can go. And I was like, I'm just gonna go, not thinking anything. And I live in Franklin, so we don't go to the Middletown Walmart a lot. And we ended up going to the Middletown Walmart, and I was looking at the games and all this stuff, and I run into my one of my old coworkers, and then I turn around and I see my youth pastor. And I was like, huh, that's so weird. I just saw him after 6 months, and I don't even talk to them anymore. So I was like, should I go up to them? Should I not? Should I go up to them? So I ended up going up to him. And in that moment, I didn't see Luke. That's my youth pastor's name. I didn't see him. I seen Jesus for the first time, and I was like, that's so weird. And as I'm trying to say something, because at this point I'm desperate, because God just revealed himself for the first time, like truly to me. And this is how I knew how I had the gift to speak at that time. And God would later reveal it to me. I was trying to like speak up about my sin, like I was doing all this stuff, and it was almost like I couldn't. And after that, I ended up not killing myself. I ended up going through, and I was like, at the end, I made a promise to God. I said, all right, I'm deciding to go all in. I'm like choosing you this year. I'm not focusing on girls. I'm not focusing on anything. I'm owing you. Like for a year straight, I said my prayer for God was for 2024 is I'm gonna follow you and not follow nothing else. And basically after that, I ended up um going to this youth conference called Winterfest. My youth group would go every year. They would send 150 kids to 200 kids. And funny about that is I was supposed to go the year prior, but I ended up backing out last minute because I was like, there's no point. And basically, I ended up saying, I'm just going to go there, but I'm not going to like do anything. I'm just going to sit there and basically do nothing. So, Winterfest 2024 comes. Um, I go into there not expecting God to move, not expecting the Holy Spirit to just wreck me. And there's this pit called it's a pit. It's basically a square around the stage where like about 5,000 students come up there. Like they have people like worship, people rap, all that stuff. And I had told my best friend, I said, I'm not going up there. You're not dragging me up there. And the worship night, I ended up going up there. And I was just like, I'm just gonna put my hands up. Because again, I'm like, what if I put my hands up? I'm scared. Like I'm afraid they're gonna judge me. And I just put my hands up and I just get wrecked instantly by the Holy Spirit. Like I dropped to my knees, I start shaking, I start trembling, and it was almost as if I'm getting goosebumps saying this. Um, it was almost as if just chains, literal chains were breaking off from me. Like I went into there with depression, drugs, suicide, all that stuff. And every single day the weight was getting lifted off, and I ended up getting baptized the next month, April 7th, and that's basically history.
That is an absolutely incredible testimony. Thank you for being transparent and for sharing your story with us. How long ago was that again? When did you say that was?
Um 2 years ago.
Two years ago.
I've been consistently following the Lord for 2 years now.
Tell me about these 2 years of you consistently following the Lord. What have these 2 years been like, and what has God done in them?
Man. Um I can't even put into words. I get emotional every time knowing like I shouldn't even be here. Oh, I went through so much health issues in these past 2 years. Where I honestly thought like what's the point of even going? I just had recently come out of a season of just like randomly passing out, and man, like when I tell you the Lord has just blessed me in so many ways, put me in positions I never thought I would be in, open doors I never thought would be opened. Um like from the health issues, like I honestly wanted to quit. There's times where I just like I about gave up, and just knowing I had the community around me. I mean, when I like talk about the first 5 months, I went through intense spiritual warfare and just straight health issues. Honestly, I honestly thought I was gonna die. Um, I was dealing with stomach issues. Nobody had a cure, and I basically was crying out to God every single day, like, "Hey, like I can't do this. Like I can't do this. I can't do this. I can't do this." And it was. I remember one youth night, I was like weeping at the altar, and for a period of time, like the altar was my safe place. That was where I would basically talk to God and say, "Hey, I don't know what's going on right now, but I know you're gonna work things out." And I would just basically every Tuesday, I was at the altar every Tuesday, every Tuesday, every Tuesday, every Tuesday. And there was this one youth night where I said, God, I am this close from quitting. I'm talking about this reminded me of the story of the woman that was bleeding for 12 years, where she said, if I can only touch the hem of his garment, this, I was like, Jesus, I'm hanging on by the thread of your garment. And one of my friends, she ended up, and God had to end up went silent for a good 2 months of this 5 month period. I mean, dealing with these health issues. And she basically leans over and said, God's telling me, don't worry, Matt. You're gonna be okay. You're the God has in you, he has you in the palm of his hand. And after hearing those words, I just basically broke out in tears because I was like, in that moment, everybody's saying, and it can get so discouraging when you see people get their healing. Like that's what a lot of people don't talk about that I noticed with today and the healings is when people just say, "Oh, I'm praying for you, God's gonna heal you," and you see people getting healed, it can be discouraging at times because you're saying, God, hey, where's my healing? Where's my healing? And through all these health issues, the Lord has shown me mercy, He has shown me grace, He has shown me so many things. Like I honestly think like I wouldn't be here if I didn't go through all those tough things because those tough things has honestly built my character. Like if you ask a lot of people like 2 years ago, they were honestly would say this kid's so shy and this and that, but now the Lord has just orchestrated so much. Like it's hard to explain. It like the Lord has just blessed me in so many ways. I just man.
Can you can you take me to the encounter that you talked about that you had in the Walmart, the Middletown Walmart Christmas shopping? And you said that when you looked at Luke, you saw Jesus. Would you care to elaborate on that? Take me to that moment. Walk me through that moment.
And like in this moment, I'm like it just it felt different. It didn't feel like Luke. It was like I was looking something in the face and saying, like, it's hard to explain because when you say you encounter Jesus, it's I just I felt an overwhelming peace looking into his eyes. Like when I talk to Luke, we always joke around, but like in this moment, it just felt different. Like when it was like it was something I was searching for so long. And basically, this was God saying, hey, like, give me one more chance. He like revealed himself through Luke because honestly, I wouldn't, if I didn't run into Luke that day, I wouldn't even be here. Like, and that's the crazy part because I was begging God to take away everything. I was basically saying, you, if you do not kill me, I'm going to kill myself. And basically, this was his basically way of saying like I know because I told God like you're not there's no way any shot you're going to stop me from going through with this. And it was just like everything in the moment I just got brought back. Like I looked into his eyes and it was just like everything that I was thinking about just vanished. And it was like it's hard to explain because like man. Oh,
It's not the same thing, but it reminds me of the story in the New Testament. I believe it's in Acts where it talks about just the very shadow of the apostles as they passed over people, healed them. As I hear that story, I am reminded of that setting of Scripture. You know,
mhm.
like if
Yeah.
God can use the shadow of the apostles, can He not use the eyes of His servants?
Hmm.
And in the same way that the shadow brought a physical healing. When you looked into those eyes, you saw the eyes of Christ, and in his eyes there was peace. It's beautiful. Um, Let me ask you this: you mentioned earlier when you were telling that story, you said you described it as Jesus revealing himself to you for the first time. Over these past couple of years, who would you say Jesus is? He has revealed himself to you and you've been walking with him and you've grown in relationship with him. Who is Jesus?
My everything. Like honestly, my everything. Like I sit here with everything that has went on in the past week. Wow. He's my everything. Like I honestly, there's times where I feel the alone, and I'll just feel this warm hug from him. Even when I'm just weeping, like I can't put into words. It's hard to explain when it's hard to explain. He has taught me so much, and just like when every time I get to talk about him, it brings a joy because it's the peace that I wish everybody would like honestly accept because I know how it was without him, and I know how it is if I leave him, and the fact that even if I don't choose him that day, he still chooses me, and knowing that I still mess up, knowing that he's still waiting for me with open arms, saying like, "That's my son. That's my son." Every time I hear somebody say "I love you," it's just like it wrecks me in a sorts because I can't wait for the day where that's an everyday thing where I'm in heaven and he just says, "Matt, I love you." Like, and I can just say, "Thank you for don't thank you for not giving up on me when I gave up on you." Like that's the biggest thing. No other no other religion, no other God can offer you is what Jesus can.
Matt, let me ask you this. As you talked about, as you shared your story, um, before you entered this beautiful relationship with Jesus, the life you described it as, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but listening to it, in my understanding, I see this picture of this person that was just oppressed with the heaviness of life. And the enemy beat you down over and over and over and brought you to a breaking point again and again and again, where you are just ready to throw in the towel. And you fought for life, you hung on, but every time you hung on, the enemy's just there beating you down more, bringing you to the point where I can't do this. And it sounded like just this repetitive cycle of this same story. I think when you're in that moment, right, when you're in that cycle, you don't see anything but the cycle, right? Like there is
Yeah.
no hope.
Yeah.
What would you say to the person? They're stuck in the middle of that same cycle. Life beats them down to the breaking point, and they're just hanging on barely by a thread. And they fight a little bit, but then they get knocked down again, and they see no possible way out of this cycle. What would you say to that person?
I can say that person that's It's okay to not be okay. It's okay to cry. It's okay to not to want to feel seen, to want to be feel heard, and it's okay to slow down. I think there's times where I've looked a cycle in the face and said, I don't know how I'm getting out of this. And if you don't know Jesus, I'm telling you that that cycle that you're living in, that you think you have no hope of getting out of, I guarantee you, if you give Jesus a try, just say, hey, Jesus, I don't know what else I can do. I'm fighting this cycle. I feel like I have no help. If you just give Jesus a chance, I guarantee you, I will bet my whole life on it. He will wreck you in a way to where you won't have to live in that shame no more. You won't have to live in that guilt no more. You won't have to live in that cycle no more. And the next time you'll look that cycle in the face and said, hey, I beat the odds. I found Jesus. Jesus was the way to break the cycle. I couldn't break it myself because if I tried to break it myself, I'm just going to keep going in a loop. But if I find the person that can break it, I'm unstoppable. And I want to tell you, if you have not gave Jesus a chance, I guarantee you, you will be able to break that cycle, and you will have a testimony on the other side of this. Speaking from experience, I had the cycle. I was in the cycle. I was telling God, I hate you. I want to die. I want to do this. And it was a repetitive cycle every the moment I waked up, I was waking up to the point I was going to bed. I hated my life. And once I turned to Jesus, everything shifted. I no longer looked at myself as a disappointment. I no longer looked at myself as a mentally crazy person. I no longer looked at myself as a depressed, all this stuff because I had the source. I had the peace. I had the peace that surpasses all understanding. I had the peace that only Jesus could give me. And I'll tell you, you're loved.
Amen. Very beautifully said. Matt, thank you so much for being here on the call with us tonight.
Mm.
Thank you for sharing your incredible and powerful testimony. Those who hung out with us live tonight, thank you. Those watching via replay, thank you. We'll do it again tomorrow. Deuces.